Hi everyone, and welcome back to Study English with Frank. And today we're going to take a look at prefixes. Prefixes. And the reason why it's good to learn about prefixes is because it can really expand your vocabulary. Many words in English can take on a different meaning, often an opposite meaning, by simply adding a prefix. Let's take a look at some examples. One common prefix is un. Let's see what happens when you add un to the word happy. You know what happy means, right? Someone is very happy that they won the jackpot, or they are very happy because they have found a new girlfriend. They're very happy. But if we put an un in front of it, how does that change the meaning? He is very unhappy. He lost his girlfriend. All of his money was stolen that he got from the jackpot. He is unhappy. He's very sad. It's the opposite of happy, right? So by adding prefixes to English words, and it's great because you don't have to learn happy again. You don't need to learn the meaning of happy. You already know that. And just by adding the prefix, you've gained another vocabulary word. He's sad. He's unhappy. Accepted. I have been accepted by her family. If you add un in front of it, you can see it changes the meaning again. It is the opposite. I am unaccepted. Unaccepted. I'm not accepted. When you put un in front of a word, it's saying that they're not happy. They're not accepted. They're not comfortable. And these are just examples. You can put un in front of a lot of English words and have it change the meaning. Expensive. Oh, that car was very expensive. No, it wasn't. It is unexpensive. Unexpensive is a little bit rare. It's, I think, used in the UK, in Britain, more than in other countries. Unexpensive. Usually in Canada and the United States, we say it is inexpensive. So let's take a look at the prefix in. In. Something was very expensive. Food these days at the supermarket is very expensive. Other things might be inexpensive. It's cheap. It's not expensive at all. So again, it's the negative of the original meaning. Something's expensive, something else is inexpensive. It's not expensive. It is convenient. If you put an in front of it, it is inconvenient, the opposite of convenient. Dependent. Dependent. Independent, if you put an in front of it. Someone is dependent on their parents when they're living at home. They depend on their parents for food and shelter. But when they get their own job, they might move away and become independent. They don't need the help from their parents anymore. They are completely independent. What about the word direct? I went home from the office and took the most direct route home so I could get home quickly. The next day, I took a scenic route. It was a very indirect route home, and it took me much longer. indirect. Considerate. Someone is so considerate of your feelings and is compassionate. But if we put an in front of it, it completely turns that meaning around, means the opposite. Someone is inconsiderate. They're very rude and inconsiderate. Our next prefix, if you just look at it as a standalone, you might pronounce this I'm. I'm. But as a prefix, it is pronounced im. Im. Something is very possible. It looks like we could do it. But if you put an im in front of the word, it becomes impossible. Something that is totally impossible to do. Can't do it. Completely reverses the meaning. Patient. Someone is so patient. But if you put an im in front of it, they become impatient. Perfect. Imperfect. The total opposite of perfect. Most of these prefixes turn the word around and have the almost exact opposite meaning as the original word. Not always. You'll find a few examples where that is not the case. That's usually the way it is with everything. There's a rule, and then there are exceptions to the rule, right? Mature. Someone is so mature, but their sister or brother may be very immature. Immature. Someone is very moral, but if you put an im in front of it, they become immoral. Now, we're not taking the time to define all of these words. Hopefully you know most of these vocabulary words in English, and if not, I encourage you to search Google and find out the meaning or look them up in the dictionary so that you can learn these words. And once you know one, you can right away know the exact opposite of the word just by adding a prefix. Here's another prefix that is in front of many words, ill. Something we would call legal. Well, if we put ill in front of it, it becomes illegal. Illegal. Something's logical, or it becomes illogical. Doesn't make any sense at all. Literacy. That's the ability to know how to read. Illiteracy. Can't read at all. Liberal. Liberal. If someone is very liberal, they are the type of people that are very flexible and accepting. They promote people's freedoms. But then if we find somebody who's illiberal, those are the people that want to restrict people's freedoms. It's like being very conservative. Illiberal. Let's take a look at the prefix ear. Ear. You might be very regular, but if you add the prefix, you become irregular. Someone is very responsible, but if they put the ear in front of it, they become irresponsible, the complete opposite of responsible. Redeemable. Someone can be saved. He can learn to do better. He's redeemable. Or someone might say, no, I don't think so. I think he's irredeemable. There's nothing that can be done to turn this guy around. He's irredeemable. Rational. Someone is very rational, follows logic, and accepts good argumentation. Or someone is irrational. He acts strangely for no reason at all. He's irrational in his actions and in the way he thinks. He's irrational. Let's take a look at the prefix of dis and look at a few examples. Agree, you can agree with somebody, or if you add dis in front of it, you disagree with somebody. Complete opposite. Obey, my children love to obey, usually, but sometimes they disobey. Disobey. Like, dislike. So you can like something or you can dislike it. You can be very honest. You could say that your friend is very honest. You can trust them with your money. Or you might say, no, you don't trust them at all. They're very dishonest. Advantage. When you look at a group of runners in sports, you might say, oh, she has a big advantage over the others because she can run really fast. Or, if you put a dis in front of it, she is at a real disadvantage today because she suffered an injury. She's at a disadvantage. She probably won't win the race. Appear. Something just shows up out of nowhere. It appears. But then, if it goes away suddenly, we say that it disappears. Disappears. Let's take a look at the prefix non. Non. We could say that an organization is governmental. It's an agency of the government. But if we put a non in front of it, we say that that organization is non-governmental. It's not run by the government of any country, and so it can be trusted as being independent and non-biased, usually. I actually work for a non-governmental agency that does humanitarian relief and helps people in disasters. Non-governmental. Sense. We can think of somebody who has a lot of sense. They're smart. They're practical. Or something that you read about makes a lot of sense. But then if you put non in front of it, it becomes nonsense. You can't make any sense out of it at all. It's totally gibberish. It's nonsense. Returnable. That's something that if you buy at the store and it doesn't work out for you, you can bring it back and get your money back. It's returnable. Or some stores may say all sales are final. And when you walk out the door, the product is yours. There's no bringing it back. And they might call that non-returnable. It's non-returnable. It's refundable. Same idea. If it doesn't work out for you, bring it back. We'll give you your money back. You'll get your refund. But some items on the shelf might say non-refundable. There's no way to get your money back. If you decide to buy this, it's yours. Stop. We all know what stop means. And you put a non in front of it, and it means it just goes forever. She went non-stop at the garage sale. She just bought everything there. She went non-stop. Profit. You can talk about companies that exist to make a lot of money. They are for-profit companies. But then there are other organizations like the one that I work for that are non-profit. Non-profit. They exist not to make money, but usually to help people. Let's look at the prefix miss. What can we do with the prefix miss? Well, here are some examples. Understand. If we put a miss in front of it, we misunderstand. We We lose the meaning. We don't catch on what the person is saying. We misunderstand them. Behave. Again, if we talked about my children, often they are good at behaving. They listen to their mother and they behave. But sometimes they misbehave. They disobey, right? Calculate. And if we put a miss in front of it, we say miscalculate, which means that you didn't quite add it up properly. You might say that things didn't quite work out the way that I had planned. I miscalculated. Carry. Miscarry. Some, like we say, not all are opposite meanings. We can talk about carrying something, but when we add a miscarry, we often think of how a woman might not be able to bring her baby to full term and has a miscarry. So that's a little bit different than the word carry by just adding the prefix to it. Judge. Here again, it's not really an opposite meaning. You can judge somebody, but usually you don't make a good judgment. When you start judging people, usually you're making mistakes because you don't know their full experience or their story. And so often, really, what happens is when you start judging people, you are really misjudging. You don't judge fairly or with justice when you start judging people. All right, what else do we have? Mono. What can we do with the prefix mono? Well, if we think of a tone, a musical tone, and we added the word mono, it means that we're just listening to one tone, not more than one. So it really means one, right? Let's look at some others. If we think of a rail system, usually railway tracks have two tracks, right? But there are some transportation systems that are monorail. That means just one rail. So here's another example where it's not an opposite meaning. It just changes the meaning. And usually in this case, with this prefix, it just means that there's one of something. Syllabic. If we added the prefix mono, it's monosyllabic, which means it only has one syllable, not two or three. Lingual. That's languages, right? When we talk about how lingual a person is, well, we might say he only knows one language. He's monolingual. Chord. Monochord. One chord. All right, let's think of the prefix by. And when you add a by to something, you're usually giving the idea that there's two to something. Let's take a look at some examples. We can think of a cycle, and if we add the by in front of cycle, we have a bicycle. A bicycle has two wheels. Lingual. Well, if we add a by in front of lingual, we can get the impression that that person knows two languages. If somebody's bilingual, we say, oh, she's bilingual. She knows two languages. The word directional, if you add by in front of it, it's bidirectional. It can go in two different directions. Focal. And if you add a by in front of that, you get a bifocal. Monthly. You add a by in front of it, and it happens twice each month. When you buy a car, the car dealership may say, we'll lend you the money for this car, and you can pay us back a simple bi-monthly payment of only $200. Well, what that means is you're paying $400 a month. Don't get tricked by a bi-monthly payment. What about the prefix try? If we added try to cycle, we've had a unicycle and a bicycle. Well, what about a tricycle? Have you ever seen one of these? Usually it's something that small children ride around in. A tricycle because it has 3 wheels. Try, when you add the prefix try, you're usually giving the idea of 3 of something. So when we think of an angle, if we put a try in front of that, we're talking about a triangle. It has 3 angles. Triangles have 3 angles. Atomic. Triatomic. Lateral. Trilateral. Tripod. That's an independent one. When we talk about pods, we don't usually think of the device that you put your camera on top of. But the tri does refer to 3 legs on a tripod. A triathlon. The prefix tri gives you the idea, okay, yeah, this marathon really has 3 different types of events that might have swimming, running, as well as bicycling. A triathlon. The prefix multi. Let's talk about tasks that we do at work. Well, are you the type of person that has to focus in on one task? Or can you multitask, do more than one task at the same time? I'm very much the person who has to just focus in on one task. I don't multitask very well. But my wife, TK, she can multitask. Color. Well, we think of color usually as one solid color. We can talk about that, but we can say something is multicolor, has more than one color. A vitamin can be just one type, vitamin C, for example, but you can also buy multivitamins that has A, B12, C, and many other vitamins as well. Multivitamin. National, usually referring to one country, but some people are multinational. I'm a dual citizen of Canada and the United States, so I'm a multinational. Our daughter, is trinational. That's using the word tri. What does that mean again? That's 3, isn't it? She is a citizen of Vietnam, Canada, and the United States. Trinational. What about the prefix pre? What does pre mean? Well, it usually means something that happened before. So, if we talk about history and we put pre in front of it, we're talking about events that happened before people started recording history or writing things down. So it's usually before they invented alphabets. And so this was all happening prehistory, before we kept records. Mix. Well, it's also, if you put a pre in front of it, it's something that happens before the mix. Arrange. We can arrange a meeting, but if we really want to put some planning into the meeting, we might prearrange it. Appoint. Well, if we add pre, we can pre-appoint. Something where, again, more planning goes into the appointment, and we could say, oh, she has been pre-appointed to the position. Paid. You can buy something at the store today, or you could have prepaid even before you got to the store. You're just going to the store to pick it up. You've already paid for it. You have prepaid. We can think of re. That's doing something over. If you do and you redo, you're doing it over again. You use, you reuse, you're using it over again. Write, rewrite. You write an article for the boss. He looks it over and says, you need to go back to the drawing table. You need to really improve on what you've done. And so you go back to your desk and you rewrite the article. Appear. Something shows up, but then it goes away and then it reappears. It comes back. Think about something and think that we have a very good idea, but someone might come along and say, I don't know if you've got that right. I think you better rethink that. So spend some more time thinking about that. Do it over again. Pay. We can repay.